Alhamdulillah, wassalatu wassalamu ala rasulillah. So last class we took a sunan for the salat. You know, we spoke about some of the actions that you do, which is not an obligation. So today we'll talk about al-mubtalat, the one that actually nullifies your salat. Okay. So one that nullifies your salat. So what is that? Is inshallah what we will cover. Mubtalat. This one is a PDF.
Yeah, this is the PDF.
Yeah. Okay, so certain things, inshallah, before we move, all of us, we tend to move in the salah. Al-harakat. Yeah, I know. This is shared, yeah.
This is shared?
Yeah,
Okay.
sure. So this today, inshallah, al-haraka min ghayri jinsi salat, the movements that is not from the salat. So sometimes we want to know. Well, first one is al-haraka al-kathira al-mutawaliya, when you tend to move a lot in your prayer. So what is the meaning of this? Generally, sometimes people tend to move. So when it becomes so much to the point that the person standing next to you, they don't even know if you're praying or you're not praying. This is when generally the scholars will tell you, in this case, this movement is an invalidation. Is the evidence strong? Some scholars will tell you, if you move 3 times a unit and all of that, but generally if you are moving to a point where the person does not know you're praying or not praying, is what they will say as al-harakat al-kathira, when you have a lot of continuous movement. Al-haraka al-yasira li ghayri maslaha, when you move for no benefit, i.e. you're scratching your head sometimes, or you might be in this part of the world, obviously nobody's wearing the headgear. If you ever travel to the Gulf, some of these people, mashallah, they'll move it back, they'll move it front, they will fix in the salah so many times, he's annoying you also. So in this case, he's not doing a lot, but there is no need for it. So generally in those cases it's makruh. Al-haraka al-yasira li maslaha. Then in the other one is when he actually moves for a reason. So let's start with something that is disliked. The first one is when you crack your fingers. This is something that is disliked. The other one is when you move. The sunnah has to look at the bottom of the floor when you're the place where you prostrate is where you're supposed to look. So when you start moving your head left and right, when you start looking above, this is also something disliked. And you can say this. You can just turn both of these together also. When you raise your eyes without any need. So when is it permissible? Many of you must have noticed when Ramadan happens, sometimes a person just decides to leave while the salah is happening, or maybe he has to go to the washroom, whatever may be the reason. So sometimes when they move, or sometimes when there's enough space, you decide to move forward. Where there is a need, in this case it's permissible. So one of the things that people also tend to do is carrying your child is permissible. So hamlul tifl or hamlul mustaq, so when there is a dire need, when you have to carry your child, generally you're just permissible for you to carry your child. Only in one case the scholars typically tell you is when you know he has najasa, i.e. you can smell. In this case, they will tell you not to carry the najasa, so drop him at that point of time. And you leave him keep him down. You don't want to be carrying najasa when you're actually praying. So generally, you're allowed to carry your child when you're praying, except when it becomes very clear to you that okay, he's in a state of impurity, then don't carry him at that point of time. Iglaq al-jihaz al-hatif, i.e. the phone is ringing.
Now I have a question connected with that. Usually a child is uncomfortable in the state of najasa.
Uncomfortable, like they make movements.
They're gonna start crying and making noise.
Yes, yeah. That is also, so sometimes it becomes very obvious. Generally, let's say you don't feel anything or you know he's okay, some children, mashallah, no matter what happens there, But let's say purely, at least from the smell perspective, if you know it's very clear that he has najasa on him, then drop it. Don't carry the najasa. So this happened to me when I was very young. This is an Arab brother. I let the phone ring. I was only cancelling. And as soon as I gave him salam, the brother looked at me and he was like, you do know it's permissible for you to take your phone out and turn it off. So it is from the actions, permissible actions. When there's a need, you're allowed to take it off and shut it also. Or put it outside, like one of these. Where there's a haja, the moment is there's a dire need. Addul ayat, counting the ayat, Fathul Bab. So why did they come up with the word Fathul Bab? Is because the Prophet ﷺ, when he was praying, Aisha radiallahu anha knocked it. When she came at the door, he moved, he opened the door, and then he went back to praying. So any harakah, any moment where there is a dire need is when you can actually move. Anything where you do it for no reason, like cracking your knuckles and all of these things, this is generally disliked. This is not from the adab of the praying a person. What is mubtalat is when you move non-stop. If you guys haven't had that experience, well, alhamdulillah, I've prayed next to people where they're moving throughout the salah. So this, you want to know what is permissible, what is, let's say, and disliked, and what will actually negate the salah. Okay, this is very important. Mubtalat salah, the nullifiers of salah. Tark al-rukn aw shart ma'a al-qudra. So leaving a pillar or a condition when you have the capability. So what is the meaning of this? So one of the shurut, or one of the rukn for prayer, is to stand. وَإِذَا قُمْتُمْ إِلَى الصَّلَاةِ إِذَا قُمْتُمْ إِلَى الصَّلَاةِ إِذَا قُمْتُمْ إِلَى الصَّلَاةِ. So when you get up to pray, so this is a pillar for you to be doing, i.e. when you pray your faraid, any obligatory prayer, if you have the capability to stand and pray, but on purpose you decide to sit down and pray, this is a nullifier of your prayer. For the women, there's a little bit of flexibility if they're outside. We'll go into that detail later. Because she generally, the scholars will tell you not to expose the back. I've seen, I'll make this very big so we don't go into this. Sometimes the non-Muslims, when they pray, I've noticed some of the masajids, the women, I don't know why they do this, they come and pray behind the men, i.e. just to show, masajids can get a little strange sometimes. They will pray and generally the women, you don't want to expose your back, i.e. when they go to sajda and all of these things. So here sometimes you can go to the wall, you don't have to expose. This is specifically for the women. Sometimes the scholars will say, okay, in this case you can sit down and pray so she doesn't expose her back. This is where the scholars will typically tend to make excuses for the women, but for a man who has the capability of standing, this is a rukn that you have to fulfill. And if you do, or if you just tell yourself, I won't do the two sajdas, I'll just, like, amdan, you've intentionally made, you know it, and you dropped a rukn, a pillar, then this is a nullifier of the prayer. Tarkul wajib amdan, to leave, again, what is wajibat is Subhana Rabbiyal A'la, Subhana Rabbiyal Azim, the what do you call it, the tashahhud al-awwal. All of this, if you leave on purpose, let's just say you're like, I'm not going to say anything, this is again a nullifier of the salah. Ziyadat rukn fi'lin amdan. So when you increase, let's say you decide to make 3 sajda on purpose, this is again a nullifier of your prayer. Al-lahn al-muhid al-ma'na, to when you deliberately, I don't want to say beautify, when you make, let's say you're extending for no reason, and you're elongating things which you're not supposed to on purpose, again a nullifier. As-salam qabla tamam as-salah, when you give as-salamu alaykum before the completion of the prayer, again it is a nullifier. So if you want to leave the salah, it's not necessary that we mentioned last time. One of the things for your prayer is niyyah. So if you just make an intention, I'm going to leave the prayer, you don't even need the salam, you've left the prayer. So the khuruj, so sometimes I've seen some brothers, when they know they won't finish their prayer, you'll see them making assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi. If you just want to exit the prayer, all you need is niyyah. Innamal a'malu binniyat. So before you start the prayer, you're making a niyyah, right? So if you make a niyyah to end the prayer, you're left that prayer. Al-qahqaha an-kalam wa hafidhu ala salati wa salati al-wusta qumu lillahi qanitin. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, before, I'm not sure how many of you are aware, people used to talk in the salah. until Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He revealed this ayah, قُومُوا لِلَّهِ قَانِتِينَ, i.e., stand up. I.e., after this ayah, talking became prohibited in the salah. Before, people actually would talk, i.e., they would give salam and all of these things. But after this ayah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala prohibited kalam, speaking in the prayer. Al-haraka al-kathira urfan, this I think we did before. When you move a lot, what is customary. And qahqaha is somebody is clearing their voice, but they're just doing it for no reason. They consider this like addition in the prayer. Akl wa shurb, eating and drinking, again, is not allowed in the prayer. I think these are things that are generally agreed upon. There's no doubt, but be very, very careful on, especially, let's say, I think the most common one is sitting down and praying. Not for the sunnah prayers, you want to sit, that's up to you. But any of the wajibat, when you have the capability and you on purpose you chose to sit down, then in this case you're not fulfilling one of the rukn of the salah.
So this is okay if
Sunnah?
Sunnah
Yes.
or nafil? Because I see, especially in Aisha.
Yes.
Right.
Sunnah, the reward goes down.
Okay. Because somehow, I don't know, I never asked the person, but I have seen many that they will make it intentionally sitting down. Like, young, right?
Oh yes, I've seen this. I had a Sudanese brother ask me this once.
Yeah.
So it is permissible for you to be sitting down. It's just it's lesser in reward. Because remember, the more sunnah you do in the salah, the more of these.
Are you saying the congregational prayer or are you talking
No.
The sunnah, nawafil.
Nawafil. Yeah.
So the more you do, when it comes to, let's say you're doing tasbih 3 times versus doing tasbih 1 time, if the person just says Subhana Rabbiyal A'la just once, he's doing the bare minimum. But if he says 3 times, he's fulfilled the sunnah. So when he is sitting down for a non-obligatory prayer, he's just losing the reward. But he's fulfilling, because it's not an obligatory prayer, if the conditions are not strict. The condition, yes.
Will this apply to Salat al-Witr as well?
Okay, this is not an obligatory prayer, except if you're a Hanafi, they consider it, or they use the word wajib for it. But the other madhab don't consider it as a wajib or a fard, however you want to classify it. Okay. Yes.
So one other question, in terms of moving, so maybe I didn't hear it correctly, but if somebody looks left or right,
It's just disliked in general.
it does not break the
No, it doesn't. It's just disliked. Generally, people tend to look left, right, or they may look above. They don't keep their eyes on the place of prostration. These are things that are disliked in general. Yes.
Sheikh was saying some hadith or something that if you look somewhere else,
The shaitan steals some of the salah. Yes, that is a hadith. Yes, that is true. So obviously, I'm not going into every detail. Then we'll spend hours
That's
there.
fine.
This is exposure today. Yes, that is from that hadith. So it's disliked generally.
That helps me actually.
Yes, that is accurate. Okay, inshallah, next one. Yeah.
This is clearing of the.
So if you're generally clearing, it's fine. Some people will go and they will keep doing it. That's why when they mean by qahqah. I think I might have to go to this one because I think the pages got moved right in this one
No, should be fine.
because the khata came here. This is in the end al-khata qawliya fi'liya.
It kind of goes in the sequence.
No, in the book itself.
Talat and then Qata and then.
Al-khata is in the end of the book. We flipped it, remember, for Masjid Wali?
Oh, maybe.
Yeah, I don't want. We'll do this in the end, inshallah. Let's go with this one, inshallah. Okay, so it's very important for us to know anwa'u salah, the types of salah, hukmuha, and the rulings of it. So any of your 5 daily prayers in Jum'ah, it is fard ayn, i.e. individual obligation. Salatul Eid, Salatul Janaza, fard kifaya. So fard kifaya, even seeking knowledge is fard kifaya.
Text as well.
Yeah. The Isha Jama'at Imam Arshad is now. Okay, go ahead. Okay. So Salatul Eid and Salatul, some scholars will tell you Salatul Eid is Sunnah. This is one of the opinions. Salatul Janaza is a communal obligation. So that means there has to always be a certain number of individuals fulfilling this right. So if nobody turns up for Salat al-Janazah, the whole community is sinning. Same thing with gaining knowledge. There has to always be people memorizing the Quran, people seeking knowledge. So some knowledge is obligatory upon every Muslim, i.e. you have to know how to pray, you have to know the basic beliefs. If you're running a business, you need to know the rules of transaction. Many people run businesses, but they don't understand any Islamic transaction. So anytime you get into a field, let's say running a business, you need to know what is halal, haram, what is clear, what when it comes to contracts, what should I write, what should I not write. That you have to. It becomes an obligation at that point of time for you. So if anytime you're going to give zakat, and if you have, let's say, a company and you have goods in your warehouse, for example, it's been lying in your warehouse for a whole year, you haven't sold it, there's zakat on those goods. So that's why it's very important for any individual who has a business and all these things, they have to know certain rulings. So anytime you do something, let's say you're going for Hajj, it's very, very saddening. Many people came for Hajj, and when I went in, it was last year, I think most people paid anywhere from 8,000 to 20,000. People came for Hajj not knowing the rulings of Hajj. That they just turned up. And last year we didn't have any Imam. So that means you were a one-man soldier and you didn't study. So certain rulings will change from recommended to an obligation once you have to do Hajj, right? At this point of time, when it's in front of you, you have to know how to do Hajj. If you're somebody who's just a regular guy, you haven't gone for Hajj yet, then it's a different ruling. So inshallah ta'ala, there's etiquettes even for Jum'ah. So I will cover that later on. Okay, Sunan, al-rawatib, tahiyyatul masjid, al-duha, al-witr. So witr, the Hanafis will classify it as wajib, i.e. they're very strict on not leaving witr. The usually Imam Ahmed, he took a position, this is just a statement, that any person who does not pray witr, don't take him as a shahid, yani don't take him as a witness, when it comes to things. This is a very, very serious affair. So rawatib, there's two particular narrations. One is to pray 10 rak'ah, one is to pray 12 rak'ah. So 10 is the mu'tamad. What do I mean by 10 and 12? 2 before Fajr, and then you'll pray 2 before Dhuhr, or some people I know pray 4. 2 after Dhuhr, and then 2 after Maghrib, and then 2 after Isha. So that makes, if you stick to one narration, it's 10, and it's just 2 before Dhuhr and 2 after Dhuhr. Another narration is 2, i.e. 4, and then to pray 2 after. That makes a total of 12. Depends on which narration you take.
Where was that slide from?
Okay. Depends on which narration you take. The other one is duha. I think after breakfast class, many of you pray duha. Tahiyyatul masjid is recommended. Al-witr again is a recommended act. Muharrama, when can you not pray salah itself? So there is particular timings. So once you have prayed Salatul Fajr, it's a little bit detailed. I don't know if I should go into the details. Once you have prayed, okay, then I don't have to worry. So there are certain time we don't have to pray. Like, i.e. you're prohibited from praying at certain times. Inshallah, that will cover. Hopefully.
So for the Eid, especially Eid al-Adha,
Yes.
if you're to do the Udhiyah, then in that case you have to pray, right?
I mean, this is a whole debate in terms of. I mean, if you're doing for somebody who's doing Hajj himself, there's no Eid. He's not going to pray Salat al-Eid in this case.
Right.
So, but for a regular person, you may find some ikhtilaf on this qawl in general. Like I said, some people, once they classify it as fard kifaya, some people will tell you you should pray Salat al-Eid. They will move it from fard kifaya to, let's say, fard ayn or something. But generally, some will classify it as sunnah also. So it is, I mean, as long as there's a community doing this, the one that I'm explaining here, as long as the community is praying, it is not an individual obligation. So if you follow that opinion, the community, I'm not saying leave.
No, understood.
So hopefully that, okay. The next one is, I think what this slide kind of covers it. For Jum'ah, I just want to mention one thing. Let's see what the next slide is. I think I kind of covered both of them together anyways. فروض الأعيان من الصلوات حاول تفرق. Okay, let me do this slide inshallah, and then Al-Jama'ah. Al-Jama'ah is praying in congregation. So again, this is, there's varying opinions on this. The least is more like, it's something that Prophet ﷺ consistently did, to pray in Jama'ah, Sunnah Mu'akkada. The Hanbalis will consider this praying in Jama'ah as a wajib, i.e., not praying in the masjid, but praying in Jama'ah, praying in congregation is an individual obligation. So if the person does not pray in an obligation, they will say it's counted, but he is sinning. This is generally the spectrum. Either they will say fard kifaya, communal obligation, or they will say praying in jama'ah is an obligation, or they will tell you that this is a sunnah mu'akkada. But the Hanbalis took a position that this is obligation upon an individual to pray in jama'ah. So let's say you're with some brothers in the park. You should pray in jama'ah, because now you're sinning if you don't do so. But if you pray by yourself, then it is counted, but you're sinning when you don't pray in jama'ah. This is one of the positions. Like I said, the least lenient opinion is it is a recommended act. So even the most, it's not like leave it, because like I said, the most flexible opinion is a highly recommended act. So generally, as men, I didn't mention men should try their level best to pray in the masjid, especially on the weekends. Most of us are at home, or at least Isha and Fajr and Maghrib other times. Generally, we tend to be at home. Inshallah ta'ala, hopefully from now on, I'll try to cover this slide, inshallah, but try your level best to pray your salawat in jama'ah. Okay, al-imam shurut. So what is expected from an imam? So sometimes there's confusion on who should lead. Those things I'll give more detailed opinions. Shurut Muslim, and only a Muslim can lead the prayer, which is, I think, adl, and he is just. Aqil, someone who's sane. Baligh, very important. Baligh is somebody who's hit puberty. As I mentioned, رفع القلم عن الثلاثة, the pen is lifted on 3 people. السبي حتى يحتلم, a young boy until he reaches puberty. Any obligatory prayer, somebody who has not hit puberty should not lead the prayer. Obligatory prayer, unless until you're a Shafi'i. Imam Shafi'i is the most lenient on this one, but generally, do not let a young boy, even if he's memorized the entire Quran, what's important is, does he know the rulings of the Salah? And that's what we'll cover. So, baligh, bulugh is one of the conditions. So the next thing they mention is muhaqqiq lil arkan wa shurut. He knows the rulings of the pillars and the conditions. Dhakar fi imamihi. So anybody, only male can lead. Obviously, male can lead women, but a female cannot be an imam. She cannot be an imam. It's only male who can lead the prayer. There's ikhtilaf, can female lead among female itself? Most scholars will tell you they can lead among female itself. Taqdeem, who do you put forward? Let's say you're in your house, and let's say somebody, this is somebody's house, you will start with Sahib al-Bayt. I.e., if you're in somebody's house, the father, Rabbul Bayt, is going to lead the house. He's going to lead the prayer. And the second one is Imam al-Masjid. If you're in a masjid, Imam Ratib, he's the one you will put forward. Al-Aqra, so there's 2 opinions on this. Al-Aqra and Afqah. Al-Aqra is a position of let's say the Hanafis and the Hanbalis. Aqra is that the one who's memorized the most. The one who's memorized the most, you'll put him forward. Imam Shafi'i and Imam al-Malik, I prefer this opinion, is somebody who knows the rulings of the Salah. I.e., he's well versed with the ahkam of the Salah itself. So here they flip the conditions when it comes to the Hanbalis. Al-Aqra, one who's memorized the most, and then after that they will prefer somebody who is the most knowledgeable. So let's say both of them are matching, both they have memorized the same, they're both knowledgeable, then you'll go with who's bigger in age. If they're both same in age, you will go with Aqdam al-Hijrah, who's proceeding in Hijrah. None of us have made Hijrah. This is the time of the Prophet. Then you say Man yakhtarahu al-Jiran, chosen by the neighbor. So I think in our day and time, if I have to practically suggest this, 2 things are the most common thing. Choose someone who knows who has knowledge of the salawat. He is the one you try to put forward. If he's memorized more, alhamdulillah, this is a huge advantage. So he has to know the rulings of recitation. ورتل القرآن ترتيلا, to basically recite the Quran with tajweed is one of the recommendations. Also, some will classify it as an obligation. So if he knows the tajweed rules and he's well versed with the ahkam, alhamdulillah, this is one of the best candidates we put forward. The next one, al-mawqif ma'moom. So the one who's praying behind. Al-mawqif al-sahih, al-mawqif al-mamnu'. What is the correct position for him to pray behind, and what is the one that is prohibited? Al-wahid an yaminihi. So if there's only one person, he will stand on the right. More than one, you go behind. I'll give you a scenario. So if I was in my tashahhud, so let's say I was only two people, and a third person wants to join, and he sees me and the other person are in tashahhud, the third person who's coming can still come and join and sit in tashahhud right next to, i.e. he can pray right next to the person. Because sometimes people don't know, should I wait for the person? As soon as you catch the jama'ah, just try to join in whatever position they are. And then they can move back after some time, or they can stick. So it is permissible for you to be praying on the right side. If it is right and left, it's okay, but he shouldn't stand on the left side alone. The Hanafis are a little bit flexible on this one, because it goes back to other hadith, and the Prophet ﷺ moved one of the boys from the left when he started praying, and he brought him towards the right side. So because of this, the Hanbalis took a position, it is not permissible for you to pray on the left. You should only pray on the right. If you're going to pray on the left, it has to be both sides, right and left, or you go behind. More than, if it's two people, you pray behind. So that's what, so it's permissible to pray on the right, and it's also, if you're going to pray on both sides, it's fine, it's permissible. When is it prohibited? To pray by yourself behind. You shouldn't pray by yourself behind the imam. If there's only two people, you pray right beside each other, and going ahead or on the left side, as I mentioned, you cannot go precede the imam in the salawat. I think I did this last time. You have to make sure you're either in line with the imam, or you pray behind if there's more walls. So anytime the line, if a person goes ahead of the imam, the salah is not valid. So anytime you're doing all of these things, you want to make sure you fulfill these conditions. Maybe should I stop here, or we can do one more slide?
Third part of it as well.
So, okay, so we'll make this the last one. Al-Jama'ah again, what is the person, the actions of the congregation? So, I'm sure many of you have visited the Haram. Sometimes you don't see the Imam, obviously. The Imam is nowhere to be seen. Or sometimes the brothers are, generally I recommend, if there's plenty of space there, not to pray at the bottom, generally.
Not to pray. Not to pray.
Not to pray at the bottom floor.
No.
When there's plenty of space, I mean. So that's all we'll cover. Mahalluhu, so actions of a congregation. Kharij al-masjid, so whenever somebody is praying outside, tushtaratu ru'yatul imam aw al-ma'mumin, i.e. you have to see the imam, or you have to see the musallis. So in the haram, you know there's musalli until they reach the imam, it's okay. So there is a continuous flow that you are seeing, then this is one of the things that they permit. So if you're inside the masjid, this is outside, when the traffic flows all the way outside, as long as it's continuous, they overlook it. If you're inside the masjid, either you're able to, you can hear the imam for one reason, or you can hear the movements of the imam. So obviously, again, if you can see the ma'mumin, sometimes you're not able to see the imam when you're over there. As long as there is continuity, or you have your knowledge of the actions of the imam, you can hear the speaker, or any of these things. Generally, one of the things, you're fulfilling the two conditions when you're inside the masjid. So you have to either وَإِذَا رَكَعَ فَرْكَعُ, because whenever the imam does ruku', again, follow him in your ruku'. وَإِذَا قَالَ سَمِعَ اللَّهُ لِمَنْ حَمِدَ, when he says. But when you are outside, you have to be aware either through the, nowadays, alhamdulillah, there is, I think in the haram there are people who repeat when the imam says Allahu Akbar, the other person, and you're also seeing the ma'mumin also following. So there are certain etiquettes we want to follow when we are following or praying behind somebody. Idrakuhu, when do you know you have caught a raka'ah? Yes.
Okay, so here in this masjid, so downstairs you can hear fine, right? But during the pandemic, we used to pray outside.
That is a very, very unique situation.
So even we used to hear the imam because there's speaker system outside,
Yeah,
right? But that rule only is applicable when you are inside the building. Inside the-
So let's just say when you're inside, obviously you're aware of the imam's movements, he's going up and down. Let's just say on a normal, let's not take COVID as a situation, that was a very unique situation. On a regular day, the masjid is full and the traffic is flowing, because in Jum'ah it goes all
right.
the way and people are praying outside.
Right.
So as long as there is continuity, i.e. there is line after line, line after line, line after line, and you can see the musallis, this is fine.
No.
Only when you completely just abandon a whole area, people do this in Muslim countries, the guy just goes prays in one corner. I'm not sure if you guys have seen this. They pray just to get the shade. He will literally abandon the whole jama'ah, and he will pray under a tree so that he can comfortably. So there should be there has to be continuity. i.e. one after the other, one after the other. As long as you can see him, it's fine. But sometimes they completely abandon this whole group, and he prays by himself under the tree. So if you guys haven't seen this, yes.
So there's no continuity, but you can see the imam. Is that also valid?
But he's praying alone by himself, like right under the tree.
No, but if there's like a group of people praying like behind.
How many? Like, are you talking
For
about two?
example, what happens like for a school, like a Noor in the morning, we pray, like folks pray here, and then the kids we pray like here.
Yeah, but you're able to see the imam, right?
Yeah, that's one.
Yeah. And remember, kids' line, you can form a different line.
What do you mean?
So generally from the etiquettes of the masajid, there's a dedicated line for men,
Yes.
dedicated line for the kids. Many of you are not aware, there's a dedicated line for the people of intersex, i.e. who are born, let's say they have both gen. I'm talking about people who have a serious condition. Hermaphrodites, I think is the English word. The ones who seriously have a problem, there is a separate line for them, and the women have a separate line. So if there nowadays, obviously, alhamdulillah, generally we tend to mix, but you are allowed to form a separate line, especially in a lot of the Quran schools. They like to follow, keep the boys on a different line, and they have the men in one different line, and obviously women have their own section. So that is fine for they can have their own lines. Just don't do one thing, it's very important. When you start a line, pray behind the imam and don't start on the corner. That's what you want to do. So always pray behind the imam. So
Is it sunnah that when you pray behind the imam, you start from the middle, and is it sunnah to join from the right?
yeah, it's all to fill the right, but make sure you don't go only on the right. You want to keep a balance of left and right. But it is sunnah to go on the right.
Yeah, so this is better if there are boys, let's say, that they form a separate line. Is it better to do that, or is it better to have them do with the adults?
I mean, I don't know if you'll have so many boys, unless and until, like in classes, generally scholars will always put them on a different line. Like when you go to a lot of Quran schools, when there are a lot of young boys, they will just make them.
No, that's fine, but I'm saying it's like
Nowadays, when there are few kids,
Yeah.
no, put them with you.
Okay.
This will be a fitting if you leave them alone. Yes.
In the we have the prayer, for example, Jummah, whatever, in the basement, and while we are praying, suddenly the sound broke. So what we should, we
Okay.
can continue with that thing,
So you should be aware of the harakat of the imam. So this can get a little tricky. So I do remember one situation where the imam was reciting, and we all thought he said Allahu Akbar, but he said Allahu Akbar to basically go down to sajda because it was the ayah of sajda. So it's very tricky. As long as you caught him in the position, so let's say we went to ruku', but it became very obvious that he went to sajda. In a few seconds, everybody realized the imam went to sajda. So we asked about this. As long as you caught the imam in the position, let's say the imam went from ruku' and then went to Sami Allahu liman hamid and went to sajda. At this point, you've lagged behind 3 spaces. So at least fulfill we're going to come to that actually over here. Sabaq, takhluf. I'll give the general ruling and I'll come to your condition, inshallah.
No, I think what he's asking is
When you cut-
you lose the audio, you lose the video.
Completely?
Because this happened to be in Muslim.
Yeah, it
I
happens.
was there.
Oh, subhanallah.
I was in Muslim Manhattan.
Were you aware of his movements?
No, we lost completely no idea what happened. Because that one is a 5-story building. and the audio got lost. Everybody, they have a TV screen, but everybody shuts it off right before the salah begins. I don't know why. I think it's, you actually are seeing the imam, it's more beneficial. But anyway, so they turn it always off. So we had no idea what's happening. So one brother kind of stepped forward and, you know, led the rest of the way.
Yeah, so that is almost like the imam not being there.
Yeah, it's like I'm
So somebody
Exactly.
stepped up and became an imam.
Yeah.
And that's yes, so that you are allowed to do
The
that.
audio was long.
So let's say the imam had to leave the prayer for some reason.
Right.
An imam can pull a person right behind him and make him lead.
Understood, but in this case,
In this case, at this point, that's like losing an imam. Somebody had to step up.
Yeah, to the next best thing.
Yes.
But in this case, fine, they have an imam, but sometimes it happens that women's sections are sometimes separate or different, and they lose the audio. So should the woman follow too in that case?
By the way, women, they are allowed to lead if it's only with women. Except some of the scholars don't allow it at all. But so you're talking about a very, very specific scenario where if somebody decides to follow this opinion, the women can lead within women itself. There are scholars who don't allow this at all. But if somebody has to step up and lead, I can check on this. But usually, when you lose an imam, somebody can, either the imam should put someone forward. And we know Abu Bakr, I mentioned this I think the last time we were here. Abu Bakr was leading the prayer, and the Prophet ﷺ, when he came, Abu Bakr moved behind, and the Prophet ﷺ came forward. So this is not, they didn't come up with the ruling this out of themselves. We know the imam can move behind and put somebody forward.
Yeah, I think I heard recently Sheikh Mahir, I think he passed out while Jummah Salah.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, I think just a month ago, Sheikh Mahir, he was maybe, the weather was high, his blood pressure dropped.
Oh,
And
okay.
as he was saying, he just passed out or something. And Sheikh Sudais took over.
Okay, I didn't know that. Yes, so somebody can take over in general. Like the narration itself is a big indication for somebody to step forward. There's only ikhtilaf if somebody broke the wudu. There's ikhtilaf on this. Some scholars, the Hanbalis will tell you if the imam broke the wudu, everybody's salah is batil. Some scholars will say as long as the imam picks up somebody or if somebody leads, you can continue the salah. There's ikhtilaf in certain details, but inshallah in general, somebody can come forward and move and lead the prayer.
I don't mean to prolong this, but because these are things that come up here. So if the screen downstairs is on, the
Yeah.
right, so you can see the imam. But usually you try not to look up. You try to stay, to be focused.
When
on
there's a haja,
okay.
that overtakes the, in this case you are allowed to look. For you to know the imam is the imam in the next. So let's say the voice eyes up, but you still have the TV.
Exactly.
Somebody over there will be like Allahu Akbar. In this case, he has to look for him to realize that what's the next position.
Makruh is the unnecessary.
Unnecessary moves. Yes.
Is there an opinion where you look at the imam for the whole salah?
And the only one, generally the recommended act is to look at the place of the prostration. You will see people looking straight. This is not something that's from the adab of the prayer. To look down at the place of the prostration is the sunnah.
If you're in a situation, like he said, where the imam has some sort of medical emergency and you're behind him and someone else steps forward, is it better to keep praying with the new imam, or is it better to go and address the medical issue of the imam who left the prayer?
This happened at the time of Umar al-Khattab. I can check that one, but generally somebody will have to attend him. Somebody's going to have to break the prayer. There can be one imam who steps forward. Someone amongst the musallis will have to address the one who.
I think two Sahaba took it.
Yeah, the two of the Sahaba took Umar al-Khattab. So this happened at the time of the Sahaba. Someone will have to break their prayer. But the Jama'ah itself can choose to continue, or they can stop altogether. But if you're in Jum'ah, it's very difficult for the entire community, because half the people won't even know what happened. So somebody will have to break the prayer. Remember, there's flexibility in the rulings when there is a dire need. So the strictness becomes drops, and it's more lenient as you study in legal maxims in general. Yes.
We'll cover Salah of Khawf, Salah of fear later on. So
Sure.
It's like an example of that happened here was at Omar Masjid in Patterson. The imam was stabbed. So
Yeah.
during congregation, I don't see how you could continue. No one can continue because there's a clear threat to everyone.
Yeah, at that point it was I don't think so
Well,
anybody
really, the
continued.
health of the, no, they didn't continue, but, so they all had to just kind of invalidate.
Yes, I mean, by the way, Fajr is like 3-4 lines typically. I think Masjid Umar had 3-4 lines.
That video, I think, was like 6 lines.
Six.
Yeah, they had a lot of people.
6 is still much lower than a Jum'ah. Jum'ah, you're talking about like 2 floors, and then you had the shoes, and then even the parking, and sometimes it seems that gets.
Downstairs gymnasium.
Wow. I didn't
Like
realize.
especially in Tarawih, right?
Yeah, Tarawih, I know that goes all the way there. Inshallah, let me just finish this, inshallah, we'll go back to the questions. Just last two, أحواله متابعة سنة, to follow the Imam's sunnah, i.e., you let the Imam go down, إذا ركع فاركعوا, so we let him do the ruku'. Some people literally follow. So when they say muwafaq, when you're literally with the Imam in every position, this is makruh. Sabaq, i.e., to precede the Imam, is yuhram, it is prohibited. You're not supposed to go ahead of the Imam. Takhlufu is when you lag behind. So this goes back to a question. Let's say the Imam recites the surahs, he goes to ruku', you're still standing, and then from ruku' he goes to Sami Allahu liman hamid. So you're basically lagging behind, and you are, for some reason, sometimes I've seen people do this, especially in sajda. The Imam is done with the sajda, he comes back, he says Allahu Akbar, he sits, again he says Allahu Akbar, the brother still hasn't come back from the sajda. Generally, this is something that is again, you're not supposed to be doing this. I.e., you're supposed to follow the Imam. The Imam is being made to follow. So if the Imam, for some reason, people do this is a minority opinion. Sometimes if the guy is a traveler and he joins, let's say he didn't pray Maghrib, he was a traveler and he stopped. When the Imam is actually in his Isha, the third rak'ah, the person sits down. I.e., he doesn't join the fourth rak'ah, he just sits down. And when the Imam comes to the fourth rak'ah, and then reaches tashahhud, he gives salam at the Imam. So this, lot of scholars actually, they tell you not to do it because the Imam is made to follow. And you are in your own prayer, and you're waiting for the Imam to come back to tashahhud to give salam with him. So generally you want to follow so if you didn't make a mistake in the prayer, but if the Imam made a mistake, you will follow the Imam when he does sajda. Same thing. So the Imam is meant to be followed. When you actually differ with the Imam, obviously this is something you're contradicting the sunnah with. I found few commentaries. For some reason, if the Imam does not do sajda sahwi, generally it is upon him. Some scholars did say you are allowed to do it individually after he gives the salam if he didn't do it. But this is, you always find few words or few comments of the scholars. Generally, the Imam is made to follow. So you'll follow the Imam during unless he does something like 3 sajdas, you'll make your, subhanallah, you'll make him aware. So in these cases, you'll make him aware, but generally, you'll follow the Imam.
So if you lag so much that you missed one of the rukn,
Yes.
then you lost that rak'ah, right?
So the only case, so that has happened to many people, because sometimes the Imam, I've noticed, they don't, tumatnina we mentioned, the Imam, it's a condition for your rukn, for your prayer. So when he went to ruku', he has tumatnina. While you're still going down, sometimes he says Sami Allahu liman hamid. So you still have to fulfill that condition of rukn. You have to rest completely before you move again. If he is still going on, you have to fulfill your condition. Because if you just go down and come up, then you haven't fulfilled the tumatnina, i.e. tranquility in your position. So in this case, it's happened to me, that's why I'm telling you. I did ask a sheikh and he was telling me that fulfill the rukn, only then move on. So in this case, you're allowed to fall back a little bit, but otherwise, generally, you want to follow the Imam. Hopefully that gave you an example. Make sure you fulfill the rukn. Do not move if you have not fulfilled the tranquility.
No, I mean, so this is a specific case, but sometimes I see like the Imam is taking his time, he has the money, but tranquility, but the person still prolongs.
So-
and sometimes it makes you, anxious, man, you're too long right next to you sitting.
So if he is doing this on purpose, people may have varying opinions of this from makruh. If he's just lagging behind completely, he's not following the Imam himself at that point. it depends on how, what the situation is. Sometimes they're delayed a little bit. I've noticed, especially in the sajdas, I've seen people, mashallah, the guy is taking, so let's say for some reason you were making dua, the imam comes up, and you realize the imam has gone up. If you, before, let's see, and the imam actually goes back and the guy is still coming up, don't go down immediately. You have to fulfill the complete rest, the tuma'nina, and then you'll go back. So make sure you fulfill. For some reason you fell short, make sure you rest in those positions. I know this was a lot of detail on this. I was not expecting this class to be this long. Yes?
So the last one, the taslim, do we need to do after two or just one? Just follow Imam, just one, then one or?
So to be safe, so many people come late, right? When the Imam gives taslim, I recommend, maybe I follow the Hanbali position on this one, maybe that's why. Okay, the least flexibility we can be is wait for the Imam to finish one taslim. Why do I say this? Is because I told you sabaq is something that's prohibited. So the Imam hasn't left the salah, right? He hasn't finished Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. He hasn't done this even once, and you already got up and you've gone to the next position. They say this falls under sabaq because he hasn't left the salah yet. The Hanbalis will tell you let the Imam finish both taslim. The Imam has left the prayer. Now you will say Allahu Akbar and you'll get up.
His question is why he's not missing?
Follow.
Just follow.
Should we follow after
To wait
two,
for him
two
to
taslim
finish
or
both
one?
salam and then you do the salam, or follow him?
Oh, this is like a. So this again, I'm like I said, this I might have a bias on this one. So the Hanafi generally they follow the Imam on this one. If you notice the Indo-Pakistani region, generally they will say Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. They also say Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. If you've gone to the Haram, I'm sure you've noticed they will tell you the whole Jama'ah is typically waiting for the Imam to finish two taslim. So this hopefully, like I said, there's some little ikhtilaf on few of these things, and it comes back to what they consider khuruj min as-salah. So like the reason why some people take the position that the Imam hasn't left the salah, so you will wait for the Imam to actually leave the salah, so they're waiting for the two taslim. If you believe one taslim is good enough, then you'll be giving the taslim after the Imam is done with the first taslim. And this is one of the Hanafi positions. The first taslim, the Imam is exiting the salah. So that makes sense if that is their position. But if they believe it's two taslim, you have to wait for the Imam to leave the prayer, and then you will follow him exiting the prayer.
What if it goes to Sadda Sahu after Pasir?
Me personally, this is one of the reasons I wait for the Imam. So depends. There's Sajda Sahu after and before, right? So let's just say the Imam does two taslim and he says Allahu Akbar and you have already got up. You have to go back and follow the Imam in this case.
Yeah, but the way they do such a sahw is also different, right?
The Hanafis do it after tashahhud. So they will do it after tashahhud. They will give Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah and they will say Allahu Akbar. And then they come back and after the two sajda sahu, they will repeat the tashahhud from the beginning and then they will give taslim. This is one of them. The other madhahib, they differ between is it before or after, depending on, there's multiple narrations of this. This is like almost a research topic. I wrote one. I might have it.
We have a slide.
When do you do, there's ikhtilaf on should you do before, should you do after. This is based on multiple narrations. They came up with this. I'll stop here because this is a lot of details. Just one thing, من أدرك ركعة أدرك الصلاة كما قال, whoever catches the ruku' catches the salah. This is the opinion of majority of the scholars. Few of the scholars will tell you they use the hadith of لا صلاة لمن لم يقرأ بفاتحة الكتاب. There is no salah for the one who does not recite Surah Al-Fatiha. So if somebody is called the ruku', he's called the unit. This is the opinion of the majority in general. By the way, what do you mean by this is that let's say you come, the Imam is in ruku' and you caught the Imam in ruku'. So there's two opinions even on this one. If you caught the Imam in ruku' but you didn't say Subhana Rabbiyal Azim, as long as you caught the Imam in the ruku', they'll say you caught the unit. Some will tell you you have to say at least once Subhana Rabbiyal Azim. This is the slight difference, but generally the majority will tell you as long as you caught the ruku', you caught the unit itself. So hopefully that's it. Yes.
Just one question. No, sir, like sometimes if, like, for example, I'm playing with my wife, is it better for her to stand a bit behind or should
Women